there, Shayna. So today is going to be our podcast, Technology for Change. Today we have Shaina Shiwarsky on our call. Hey there, Shayna. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, great. Thank you for having me on the call. So Shaina Shiwarsky, co-founder of Legend. I live in Austin, Texas, but spend a lot of my time in Costa Rica as well as in Europe in the summers. And I'm the co-founder of a tech company focused in the travel space, and happy to share more on what we do.
Awesome, awesome. Well, that's fantastic. It's always great to meet another fellow entrepreneur. Now, tell me what brings you over to Costa Rica.
I 4 years ago, during COVID, I lived in New York for 10 years, and I think there's a lot that COVID made you reflect on and think of. But when you have a choice to live anywhere in the world and choose where you want to live, you start thinking about environment and community. And there's a community in Costa Rica that is a bunch of entrepreneurs and people doing interesting things from all over the world. But you can wake up in the morning and surf and do yoga and be in bed by 9. And so it's an amazing lifestyle. And so I've been spending my winters there for the last 4 years. And so it's a great place to kind of ground and stay connected to the values that I care about.
Wow, that's incredible. And that actually did present an awesome time to be able to get out of your comfort zone or area you're stuck in. I knew quite a few people who started to do that kind of thing. But yeah, with that being said, I mean, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on. Like I said, this is Technology for Change, and basically, Shaina, like you're very passionate about environment and stuff like that. Obviously, that I've seen and you've spoke about in the past. But I would love for you to take us back, on a journey to your early days. Like what led you to pursuing, this as you've come to kind of see now? Like what brought you here?
Yeah, I think at a young age. So I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which doesn't have a ton of diversity. And at a young age, I loved being outside and being with the planet. I also loved solving problems. So I would stay up at night and build like 2,000-piece puzzles and see how fast I could complete them. And I don't know if you remember, but I used to, before fully the internet came to be what it is today, you could order like 40-page travel magazines. So I'd order all these Tahiti and Fiji magazines, and my parents would be like, what have you ordered? And I think I always dreamed of just expanding my horizon and growing through cultures and people and diversity of thought. And my mom was a software engineer at 19, so she really I saw her challenge herself and go into markets that were traditionally not normal for women at the time. And so then I studied sustainability in college, sustainability and finance. And with my understanding of technology, I always dreamed about kind of bringing those two things to life. And so one of the first technology startups that I worked with out of college was an environmental tech company where we modeled like catastrophes in the world. So what was the probability of an earthquake or hurricane happening, and started seeing the power of data and technology and how it could help us really manage, some of the big issues that we're actually trying to solve today with climate change and resource allocation related to those things. And so I'd like to think it was, in me from the beginning that I feel connected to the planet, and that's where I find my pleasure in life is being in nature. So that's really what led us to where we're building with Legends now.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I'm going to ask all about Legends here, but
Yeah.
I'm curious, what is the most, what's your favorite place that you've like traveled to or seen or heard of, as far as like what you've learned throughout your journey of like just kind of being one and closer with the earth itself?
Yeah. So everywhere is so unique. I mean, Santa Teresa, Costa Rica is the place I go every winter. I feel very grounded and very connected to it there. I think it's the closest place to paradise I've found that I could live like consistently for a long period of time. In terms of unique place, I think Malta is a really interesting place from like a cultural perspective, as well as just the landscape. I mean, it sits, between in the middle of the Mediterranean, between Italy and Africa, and so you've got a lot of unique influence from a geological perspective, as well as just from, culturally. It's been a spot where a lot of different countries have had establishments, and so that's really interesting. But yeah, I would say those are my two spots right now.
Awesome, awesome. So that's really cool. And I think as far as the listeners go, I think it's good to know about things that are happening around you outside of where you're currently at. It's always good to get that kind of cultural influence from other places. Let alone being able to see all the differences between just from a geological perspective. I mean, it's just incredible. So these are definitely places to check out if you haven't seen or been to those country places. So I guess that leads me to my next question because you kind of led up to this, but as far as your initial passion, we understand that that was something that really touched you early on, as far as the environment and being kind of inspired by that. But how did this eventually lead you, like as far as on your journey to co-founding Legends? I mean, I guess like how does that all tie together?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I've been in the technology startup world for the last 12 and a half years. So, I started my professional career as this background of sustainability and environmental, studies in college. And then I got into the tech world, started my career at consulting actually at Deloitte. And then, being the problem solver that I am, I yearned for impact rather than kind of corporate ladder status. And so, 12 and a half years ago in New York, the startup scene was just kind of expanding outside of, the MarTech and advertising, getting really interesting companies built there, and got the opportunity to get into that ecosystem really early. And really loved the idea of being able to make a change with the work that I was doing on a daily basis, as well as solving the deep rooted problems, whether it's in industries or the problem that was in front of me. And so over the last 12 and a half years, primarily spent my career in data. 6 of those 12 years were data tech companies. And the last one before starting Legends, I'd been with a company prior to that from Series A to Series C that had an acquisition. And I think I learned there that you can put a lot of energy into a company. And at the end, like sometimes it's not matched with the result you get out, right? Or the outcome. And so it made me reflect a lot on what is my balance of life and what is my purpose and how do I find joy? I believe that joy is found in the act of creation. For all of us, creation could be a thought, it could be an idea, it could be a physical product, but it could be as small as literally creating a routine or creating, a fence in your yard. And that's where joy lies. And how can I do more things that contribute to joy, which is how do I create more? And how do I put myself in an environment where it's conducive to doing that? And so, starting your own company is, I think, the ultimate essence of creation. It's also the ultimate essence of suffering at times. But it is something that I was ready for, doing it for 3 other founders so that I could really feel be the one who was making the change and be the one who was actually, at the center of the creation. And so that's really what led me to what I'm doing right now. And I think I've always believed that anything's possible. And if you want it, like you can create it. And I think the challenge is, sometimes we want things, but we're not ready for it. And so making sure that the moment that you make those decisions, you're ready to actually lean into it.
Gotcha. Now maybe we can talk about the platform or Legends itself? Like, what are you guys providing to your users?
Yeah, so we started out first as a B2C company where we were, I was in 2019 traveling all around the world with my partner at the time, and started like questioning, why are people still asking me for recommendations, like through WhatsApp and through, I was spending, weekends like sending recommendations and emails from all of these places that I was going to friends. And started, questioning, like, why is that still the process? And digging into it further, we found that the hospitality and tourism industry just have a massive data problem because everyone books on the booking sites like Expedia, Booking.com, TripAdvisor. 80% of bookings happen there. And what ends up happening is none of those sites give the data about who you are or what your bookings are to the brands that you actually love. So the hotels you're staying at, the restaurants you're going to, the tours, none of them ever get your preferences. And so they can never market to you continuously. And it's created this ecosystem where, the brands constantly have to put their supply on those platforms, but the consumers have a really terrible experience. Like, there's no personalization ever. And so we said, what if we flipped the model and we looked at a different data source? And so we found that your phones are, the operating system of who you are as humans. They power a lot of things like how you do your wellness, how you do health, how you shop. And we said they also capture a lot of data about where you've been and what you've done and the places that you like. And so we said, could we unlock this data for consumers and first give them awareness of their preferences? Like, imagine if you could actually see what Instagram or Facebook knows about you, right? Like, what your profile is on those platforms. It would give you a lot of awareness to do your own shopping, right, in a different way. Maybe find brands that are similar or what you like. And so we said, can we give consumers first this profile? We call it your travel DNA, that tells you all the cities, countries, climates, languages, places you've been. Like, think about all the restaurants you've been to and you might not remember the name, or this little spot you pass by, traveling in a location. It's all documented. And so we created a technology that can instantly transform the data on your phone. So it could be latitude, longitude, date, time, into all of these preferences. People originally kind of compared it to the Spotify Wrapped for travel. And what we found is consumers were really excited to see these preferences. And then it changed the way that they search and discovered. So they would say, oh, if I've been to this surf break, show me the 4 other surf breaks that are similar to it. At the same time, brands who don't have data on their customers started seeing these profiles and said, how do we get access to this? And at that point, we said, can we build a tool for brands in the industry that they can distribute to their customers? So think of a Marriott Bonvoy has close to 180 million travelers in their Bonvoy. Can we build a tool that they can distribute to their customers, and their customers can proactively give them this data, and we can pay customers, for giving that data directly to Marriott? And so what we call it is a zero-party data platform, which zero-party data means a customer proactively and intentionally shares data with brands for some value exchange. And so that's where we're at now, is we have built this product where it aligns incentives from a consumer perspective and a business perspective, where consumers share data with the brands they love, the brands give them rewards, benefits, and personalization. And now, you have a more efficient marketing process, reducing the cost to actually, acquire and maintain customers.
Gotcha. So this could, this is applied to travel, but technically it could be used for just day-to-day like life.
Exactly. Yeah. So, we think there's large applicability in, e-commerce, retail, brands like an REI, Patagonia, Sephora does amazing stuff from a data perspective. And so we think about the profile that we've created. Once someone creates their profile once, it's dynamically updating and changing without them having to do anything. And they can take that profile and authorize it to, Airbnb, REI, et cetera. And so imagine it being this identity that is all of their preferences, that is owned by them and controlled by them. that they can get, rewards and benefits for.
Incredible, incredible. And how are you consolidating all the data for the user? Are you guys using like I know there's a lot of craze around AI, but like what's the backing technology you guys are using?
Yeah, we have our own machine learning algorithms that have AI models built into them. We're also using AI from a like categorization and tagging perspective. So when you think about the hospitality and tourism industry, a lot of it's built on like API content. So like companies like Amadeus, Viator, Get Your Guide. So for example, like TripAdvisor, over 50% of their revenue is contributed to Viator, which is basically just activities and tours that are resold on TripAdvisor. And so we are creating a universal like schema of the travel DNA across all of the supply inventory. So imagine, someone's preference says Shaina likes surfing at 9 a.m. in Costa Rica. We can tag Marriott's hotels that are surfing Costa Rica, et cetera. And so we create this one universal language, and we use AI to do that across different types of content, properties, services that the whole industry is offering.
Okay, that makes sense. No, that's really cool. So I guess I mean you guys aren't really going to be involved like on the actual travel side, like as far I mean I guess it could. I mean it could be as far as like the data being used, but as far as like the actual direct touch points, would you guys ever be like planning on getting into the travel industry as far as like booking stuff like that too?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely on the roadmap. So we see ourselves being able to have a wallet where the consumer can see all of the brands that they're sharing their data with. And then because the brand, we have their services, properties, things they're upselling, we can actually surface that inventory to the consumer in our own application as well. And so at that point, we could take, a booking revenue or some type of affiliate, which is really standard in the industry. And so, yeah, there's definitely a possibility for that. Right now, our tool is a B2B SaaS tool that brands are purchasing and implementing within their own applications or websites. And we still have a relationship with the consumer because the consumer's, creating their DNA. And so we're basically a B2B to C right now. And we believe there's opportunity to turn that consumer end on, once we hit a certain volume of profiles we've created.
Gotcha. Um, and as far as your current like onboarding, do you guys like how are you guys showing people this? How are you guys getting this across to the masses?
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's a
So
really cool concept. And I can see it being super useful. But I mean, because it almost sounds like there's also that like almost reward component too that you're giving like when people share their data with these organizations and such like it's the um, zero party. You said zero party data, correct?
mhm.
Yeah, so like basically they're giving this in return for some type of reward or some type of payment for the
Yep.
service or for the product of their data, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious how are you getting what's your feedback from that side? Because I mean I think it's obviously we're using a lot of things for free nowadays with Facebook,
Mhm.
and the cost is really our data at the end of the day. But how are you guys kind of portraying that to the layman or to somebody who wouldn't really understand how that technology really works and such?
Yeah. So the first presentation is we give them this profile, right? Of like where they've been and all of the places they've experienced. That like incentive we tested with, population of 2,000 people. 90% of people gave us access to that, which was super high with zero incentive. We know that's, it will change from a demographic perspective. Gen Z and millennials are more fluid with kind of data sharing than older generations. How we have discussed with brands. So an example would be like in Bonvoy and Marriott's app, someone could come in and we could say, for 10,000 reoccurring monthly points or 20,000, right? Create your profile and get instant recommendations or suggestions on where you should go next. And so the brands are willing to tie rewards and benefits to value this data because they don't have it from their customers right now. And so just as a reference point, they're paying anywhere between 10 to 20% commission to like a booking.com, Expedia, travel agents when someone books on these other platforms. So they have a high like margin to play with to give customers, a rev share to actually give this data to them and help direct book. And so that is, what we're exploring, and likely we'll have different incentives based on, so we have a proof of concept going right now, valuing different types of data to consumers and what actually is the price that they associate with that. So for example, someone sharing their calendar data, like, do we need to give 5,000 points, or will they just give it for free? Photos, might be a higher level compensation, but it's richer in data. And so we're doing some R&D on what is that exact price point for each source of data that we need to offer so that we can align that with the brand's incentive.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And that kind of leads me to my next question. I guess, as far as where you guys are currently at with the, process as far as the life cycle of development, or whether you guys are already in the go-to-market, or where you're at, which stage are you guys currently in as far as the product goes?
Yeah, we, just from a company journey perspective, we started 2 years ago. We first built a consumer product. We actually shipped 3 consumer products, so multiple iterations. And then in the fall of last year, we decided to build our B2B API, which is now implemented with 2 customers, 2 paying customers. And we are having active conversations with some of the biggest brands in the industry to integrate our product within their existing technology infrastructure. So I would say we're not fully at product market fit. We're definitely at like a product user fit, where we're getting a lot of inbound from different segments in the industry, from hotels to cruise lines to travel agents, who are really excited to get better, high quality data directly from their customers and have a tool to be able to do that. That has resonated a lot. So from a go-to-market, like messaging and validation, we won the Startup of the Year in the hospitality industry in the fall last year, in November, from a publication called Focusrite. So that was huge validation that the industry wants us to exist. And a lot of the judges for that over the course of the year are some of the biggest brands. And so now we're kind of making sure that the next version of, how we evolve our data capture and transformation tool for the brands is kind of meeting the enterprise scale. I think we weren't expecting so many enterprises to be interested so quickly. And so we've chosen now to kind of go up market and build really as an enterprise product, because there's so much distribution there for us to get access to just a larger amount of travelers, right? To be able to make sure, we're building the right thing. And so that's where we're at, and we're closing our funding rate, like our pre-seed raise right now. So a lot going on.
Yeah, that's incredible. I would love for you to kind of go a little bit more in depth into where you're currently at, because it's a lot you're doing right now, and I get it, see it. But a lot of the people listening are aspiring entrepreneurs, or entrepreneurs who are just kind of getting started. So I'm curious if you could kind of explain some of those steps to getting your name, getting your brand into the doors of these enterprise. I know it's tough, and it's been 2 years, but those 2 years were full of, I'm sure, changes, feedback, growth, like you just mentioned. There's a whole journey as you get through each phase, and you have to come back, product market fit, all these other things that you actually have to make sure you're doing before getting too far ahead of yourself. And that's the folly of a lot of startups when they get started, right? Is they go too far. And it's like, you need to build that core product, make sure people like it and find that fit. So I would love for you to kind of, if you may, go through some of those kind of key moments in that journey to get in the door of the enterprise, and your first one, and how'd you do that, and maybe even how did you start the funding round? Because I know a ton of the aspiring entrepreneurs and that listen to this, sometimes my biggest question from everybody's always revolving around, the funding aspect, right? And it's like a big monster that's like, oh yeah, you can do it, but what's the first step? And then once you get the first step, where do you go from there really? What's the proper way to do it? So I'd
Yeah.
love from your perspective, and I asked the last guest the same thing, and I'm curious from your perspective, kind of what that all looks like.
Yeah. There's a lot there. So I'll try to
I
cover
know.
it. And maybe just starting with funding, because it leads into kind of how you build the business. We got some feedback. We did Techstars at the end of last year in Austin, and we got some good feedback actually during like this thing called Mentor Madness that they do. And one of these investors said, "Do you want to be a venture-backed startup?" And I think a lot of people, when you're building a business, especially in tech, you assume you're a venture-backed startup. And I think in the funding world today, it is a really important question to ask yourself, because the requirements for early stage startups have significantly increased, and it's much more difficult to get early stage funding if you haven't built a business already, right? If you don't have a proven track record. Um, and and so building a great business is just as fulfilling and successful for an entrepreneur than a venture-backed business. And what I mean by that is your goal could be that I have this very niche expertise in this one area. I want to solve this problem. Let me first start building my business on how do I start getting revenue in the door, right? Not like creating this idea that it's got to be $1 billion company. Because when you decide to be a venture-backed company, the multiples of how a investor is going to look at the your idea is not going to be if your idea is a good business or if it's a great idea. It's going to be, can they turn this into a multiple win on their side? Can they give you $250,000, and how long is it going to take them to get 10x of that back? And they're not. And so a lot of the feedback then you'll get as you're raising is not about if your business is a good business or if it's actually solving the problem it needs to solve in the industry. It's, can I make money as an investor? And that changes the narrative for you as an entrepreneur. And I think answering that question first is really important. And it doesn't mean that they're exclusive. It doesn't mean that you can't solve a great problem and have a great business and be venture backed. It just changes the way you need to think about your commitment to the business, how much energy and time, and how you're actually telling the narrative of your business and what you're prioritizing at the end of the day. And so I think that's an important one that we definitely, thought when we started we were a venture-backed business, but I think the lens of, having that and what the requirements are now are very different than what they used to be. In terms of just like how to start, I think also had a really great feedback from someone else about a year ago, an investor that correlated starting a business to building a house. And they were talking about a lot of the waste that has happened in startups, like resources, money, time spent, and how to kind of reduce that. And they basically said, when you start a house, you have a piece of land, right? That's your constraint. You have a constraint. And it might be, the area of that land that you can build is your constraint, but you start there. And that correlates to like potentially your skill set. Like your constraint is, what are you good at? Like, where do I have domain expertise? What can I do on my own, like with my team, etc. And then from there, you go out and you say, okay, this is my constraint. And like, let me hire a great designer to build the dream, the vision. But you never start building until you build that vision. And then you look at, that vision and you do a whole design of it. And then from there, you typically go get the money for that vision, right? You get it from yourself. Like if you believe in this dream, you might get someone else to buy into it. And I think real estate does this really well, like real estate projects, right? They do a ton of design and then testing of that design through marketing, through messaging, through getting people to commit like $50,000 up front, for a community or whatever, to be part of this vision, before ever actually building. In the tech world, what used to be different when money was like very readily available, it was like, here's an idea, here's a vision on a napkin, and give me $5 million to go build this, and then you figure it out. That's not the world we live in today. And so thinking about limited resources, like I would suggest building that dream, like getting a designer, like whatever it is, a physical product you're building, a tech product, getting a designer, like going and testing and validating that with potential customers, that every customer you put that in front of, they say, I want that. If you can get to that place and you can get a list of customers to say, build me that, I will pay for that, you will have an easier time getting the money, but you will also have done a lot of the work to understand what you need to build when you do have that money. And so that would be like the first step I would take, starting over, is not doing any development work until you get enough commitment. And what does that commitment look like now? Like investors and people want to see brands that they know. It used to be like, okay, you could say I have 10 LOIs or, 5 customers who are paying me. If you're trying to raise money and someone doesn't know one of those brands, it doesn't help them de-risk. And so thinking about where you put your energy in the early stages of, it might just be one big brand, right, that people know, or 3, like how you quantify the traction you need really needs to be traction that anyone could look at and say, yes, like there's validation here. I don't know.
Exactly. No, I'm mind blown because this is how I like kind of approach all my startups, or the business that I start, and it's kind of the same message that I'm preaching. It's like, take the smallest steps possible so you can get your fit. Like every step should be as small of a step until you can validate each part of the process, so you're not getting into development and spending money or tons of time on something that you have no idea if it's even going to be worth it in the end. And it's like, it's something you see all the time with startups in general, that they're already too far ahead before they even have one person that said they like the product.
Yeah.
So I mean, I mean, even in school and stuff, we learn, that it's like that was a huge part. But I guess it's when you get to the action, part of that stage is when you really have to put that theory, those things you learned, into check, and really check with other people, and make sure that you're not selling to yourself, you're not selling to your head and what you think's great, you're selling to the people around you. So
yeah, and that comes with the type of technical team you put around you too. Like the early stage technical team isn't going to be the team that maybe gets you to an enterprise scale product, because you need them to be able to build fast, quickly, to take direction, like the growth hacking type of tech team, which fewer people are like that. But if you can find someone who can understand problems and help understand how you are trying to validate them and quickly ship landing pages, tests that help a customer either understand the capabilities or get over the sales hurdles, you'll always then be able to build back into that. But it's a challenge, because you're constantly battled to show traction in different ways, as a startup. And so it is a constant checking point of like, are we going too fast? Are we solving the right problem? Like making sure that you're pulling yourself back every time you want to do more.
Exactly. It's that checks and balances within yourself that you're kind of applying to your product, and just kind of saving yourself a lot of time and stress at the end of it. So yeah, I mean, I've had a lot of people I know in the community, things like that have come up to me with the thinking that they lose all their credibility when they go in with a product like this situation we're talking about, where the product is here, it's all the way over here, and it's a little bit too far than what they should be presenting at that point. But they're like, I take it in, it might not work. Yeah, I don't have 100% faith in my product, right? And
Mhm.
it might not work when I go to that table with the big dogs in the C-suite or whatever. And unfortunately sometimes it doesn't. And you feel like you lose all credibility. And it hurts me when people say that because it makes there's a whole everybody understands the startup journey, I think, and the entrepreneurial journey. And it's something to where if you keep trying and pushing, I don't think that's something to worry about, but I'd like to hear from your perspective if you've seen that. It causes burnout. It
Yeah.
leads to a ton of things for the founder. It leads to even embarrassment. But
Yep.
yeah, I want to hear from maybe your perspective because I mean I think we've all been there as entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
in a place where something just went completely wrong and you were prepared, but it just didn't work out.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I mean, I've definitely been there. It's funny because, I was selling other people's products and leading sales team when the products weren't even there and, humans were, and I had no problem. But when it's yours, you definitely feel an attachment to the identity. And I think what I found is the more you can disassociate the outcome and your identity to what you're trying to solve, the easier it will be. And that's where I come back to, like, for me, what gives me grounding is creation doesn't have a measure of success for me. Every single thing I do or create helps the industry move forward. Even if the business goes out of business, we've still done stuff for someone else to solve this problem. There's this concept like mimetic desire, that Peter Thiel and Tony Hsieh used to like lead by, but I believe in it in this idea that nothing is original and everything is an imitation on an existing model. And if we don't, like, for example, Thomas Edison could have never created the light bulb if the candle didn't exist. Like, he didn't. Innovation is not coming up with something that people have never created before. It's taking existing models and it's saying, how can we do them better? And so we're so important as entrepreneurs to the ecosystem to propel creation. Where we've failed entrepreneurs is in the investor world or in this society, we promote people who have certain types of exits and who accomplish certain, revenue goals or statuses or wealth. And therefore, if we don't do that, we feel like we failed. And there's not a lot of promotion of entrepreneurs by just actually being an entrepreneur. By saying I'm going to like create something, like that person has changed that industry in some way. And someone might look to what they've done and say, oh, that was interesting, right? I'm going to take that. But we don't ever like close that loop so people don't get that feedback. And so what I would say is like, it's super rational to feel that. Like I've felt that multiple times, but like, how do you make sure that your identity is truly tied to like creation and solving the problem rather than the outcome of, someone giving me money and being this, noted entrepreneur? Because if you can stay in that space, then you'll continue to come back and create, and it'll be a successful creation, right? At the end of the day, and you won't be worried about the rejection because you'll take that feedback, you'll learn from it, and then you'll go back into the creation mode, and you'll come back to them, and then they'll be surprised. And I think the other thing is people just want to see progression, and like expectations is really important at the end of the day, especially in the beginning. And you want companies who believe in a vision, who don't believe in what you have today. And so when you're selling, like you're selling the vision, and then you're showing them a piece, like it's crawl, walk, run, right? You're showing them step one of that vision. Hey, so this is step one. Like, what do you think of this? We still got this, but we want your input to build with us to that vision. And if someone doesn't want to be on that path, they're not right for you in this early stage. And revisit them in a year, but making like it's okay to disqualify in the early stages people who just aren't comfortable with that level of risk and with that level of creation.
I agree 100%. I mean, it's it's something that it's like you really do. I mean, the whole point of starting isn't it should be the passion, right? I think all of us that have like started companies and pushed, it wasn't because of the money, it was because of the desire to change the world, to make an impact.
Yeah.
through the use of technology, through the use of maybe, whatever you can do to impact somebody else's life, and however much better that makes you feel, right? However much better each life, each person, each creature, whatever you're trying to change in the world, whether you're trying to help with, nature. I mean, at the end of the day, each thing that you do and can quantify, that would be the thing that's actually giving you your joy or your motivation to keep going,
Mhm.
which is cool. But obviously, I think as long as the basic needs are good, right? As
Yeah, I
well,
mean,
because
I
that's
could be
also
making a ton more money doing something else than what I'm doing right now. That is for sure.
yeah. So yeah, I guess I'll go into the closing remarks and such. I think we can. I'd love if Shanna, you want to leave the entrepreneurs or audience that is listening with one piece of advice, and also after, I'd love for you to kind of tell them where they can connect with you, or where they can follow you, or learn more about you and your journey. Get your product, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. One piece of advice. I think uh, the one piece of advice that I would give is every step matters. And really thinking about the journey. There's this analogy, while I was in Costa Rica, I climbed this mountain barefoot. Probably would never do it again. But while I was doing it, I had this experience where, as I tried to run to suffer less, it became even more painful. Uh, but as I took a step in each little area that was slightly, cleaned in the jungle, and sat in that step for a second, I could actually look around, enjoy the nature, like connect with the animals. And then I was ready to take my next step, and it was less painful. It took me longer, but I was able to enjoy the entire experience up. And I get to the top, and there was a group, and majority of them had shoes. And they're like, anyone want to share, what you like anyone experienced during this? And, I'm like 2 hours. It's been a long journey. And I was like, it was right when we were starting to build the company. And I said, I just had this revelation that like we could run to the top and like we'll get there, but my feet are going to be bloody. I like would have to lay in bed for like probably a month afterwards. Um, I might get, bitten by a spider because I won't see it. Um, or we could just take each step and sit in the step for a second and know when we're ready to take the next step. And like it might take us whatever, 2 hours more, 2 years more, but it's way more enjoyable. And we would have remembered the joy, we would have felt it, the experience would have been better. And I think like just having that as a mindset of like it's your pace that you want to build this at. And it's your journey. And so every step you take is your step and it matters. And you can sit in that step, even just creating a website for a year. And then maybe the next year you want to take the next, but like you'll know when you're ready for that next step. And it doesn't matter how quick or how slow you do it. But what matters is that it feels good to you along the way. And so maybe that's the feedback I'll leave.
That's amazing. That pretty much summed up the entire journey. I usually compare it to like a snowball, but I like this one better. Way better. Holy cow. Okay, so yeah, basically to everybody that listened to that, each small step you take a moment every time you have to go. Don't go rushing ahead, getting to the end and finish line. Take a moment to enjoy the view. Take a moment to get everything built to that point, and then take your next step. Yeah, that's incredible. Shannon, I appreciate that, and I'd love for you to share your where people can follow you, where they can get more updates about your journey, stuff like that.
Yeah, follow me on LinkedIn, pretty active there. Our company LinkedIn is Live My Legend, and livemylegend.com is our website. But yeah, feel free to reach out to me. I happy to give feedback or guidance for anyone's journey. And yeah.
Awesome, and we'll get your links onto the caption as well, so people can follow you from there. And yeah, I guess everybody, thank you so much for listening. This has been Technology for Change. Make sure to follow, like, share, subscribe, and so you can receive updates from us. And we'll include Shayna's information below. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.